Okay, Phil, we're going to get you going. Start the process here. So, first thing I want to do is get your band off. There we go. All right. Good. All right. Now, we have to take your case back off. Okay, well, got your case back off. Yeah, it looks pretty good in here. We're running, so that's always a plus. Your movement is a little hazy. Got some hairs. Not nice to see, but it's all there. Quite a bit of movement in your arbor port, but that's why we're going to do service and get that jeweled and make sure that that's taken care of. All right, now we can start with our disassembly process. Pliable but pretty flat case back gasket. These screws are not the tightest I've ever encountered. Ooh, that one was particularly loose. Okay. Let's go ahead and take the power out of your mainspring. Not too much residual. Says it was, at least in the case back, if I can read the dates properly, 2018 was perhaps the last service, but I don't see any lubrication under your cap jewel. It's an interesting color for that to be. Interesting. I'm not sure this has ever really been apart. Check all these pivots under the microscope. I'm always a little leery prior service, but we will erase any negatives of the past. We're going to rebuild your crown and stem. It looks like all original in there. Certainly somebody has filled it with some grease to try and maintain some level of watertight, but there's no substitute for a crown rebuild, which is part of our process. To get you back in full health. All right. Well, let's proceed. Go ahead and get the case off. All right. So there's your dial. We should just go with our instinct and leave that as it is, as you've asked. So second hand, minute hand, and your hour hand. Now, what's interesting to me would be to do a slightly closer investigation of your hands, because as I suspected, let's look at your minute hand here. I believe these have been patinaed, which is an interesting process. So somebody has either dipped this in some tea or some coffee or some other substance to make it a bit darker, because I believe that these are aftermarket and have been made to match your dial, which is a nice thing to do, but that's just the way it is. Very interesting. All right, let's take a quick look at your dial. Now that we've got your hands put aside, you can get your dial off and see if it's the dial for the watch. Well, the dial screw is quite loose. "4N." I believe that's actually completely consistent 4N. So we're both at 4N, which is nice. That's good. Original dial. Very nice. Okay. So that's nice to see. For sure. All right, so now we can proceed with disassembly. Let's go ahead and get your dial, get your movement stripped down. Don't need your stem anymore. All right, let's proceed. Some slight. It's either scoring or lubrication. I have to check that very closely. You may need a new palette fork here. Let me just take a quick, close look here. there's not adequate lubrication and wear starts to happen, it's amazing. These jewels can actually be scratched by the action of the wheel. Yep. We'll have to clean it really well and see what we get. Not convinced yet. It's not redeemable, but we certainly have to look closely. But there may be a pallet fork in your future. Not sure. I also want to look at your escape wheel very closely to make sure that that's not badly worn in a way that's, again, irredeemable. We'll get there. Another loose screw. One, two, three, 5. All right. Ooh. Yeah. So here you can see where the barrel has etched into the upper this plate here. So we're gonna definitely be in store for some. Woo! That bushing is really badly worn. Huh. Also want to take a very close look at your bushings here. These can get worn if you're not careful. Okay, we'll come back to that. Let's go ahead and get your pivots and your wheels out. Okay, here's your fourth wheel. Here's your third wheel. And your escape wheel. Here's your hacking lever. Take your barrel. Woo! Oh my. All right. Well, definitely need of jeweling. You can see this brassing here. That's from your barrel flopping around within this lower port, and that port is egged out. And the reason is because of all this grinding material. It's been lost from your barrel, which then gets pushed into the movement. So it's interesting. They did a bit of a cosmetic service. This certainly has never been a part in a way that would mean that this item has been taken out and cleaned. So it's always interesting to see the history of these watches. Okay, so that's all for your main plate, main train side. Let's go ahead and take your calendar works apart. Okay. date wheel. Okay, such interesting color variations of the metal as it's changed over time. You see this sort of bluing effect sometimes, different movements. Oh my, boy, that's totally loose. That was completely unattached. My goodness, what happened there? I have to take a close look there. We said that this seemed a little out. All right. Intrigue, intrigue. Get your keyless works torn down. Slight amount of rust on the surface here. That's not a big deal. And with that, your movement is torn down. Oop, one more thing. Can't forget you. All right, that's everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to jewel this lower mainspring arbor port, jewel your upper bushing for your mainspring arbor, and we will get to cleaning everybody up. All right, we'll be back. Well, I just wanted to celebrate a little bit and let you know that you are the recipient of our first ever jewels that we had made and are going to be utilizing in all of our repairs going forward. It's just so exciting. These are American-made, proper upper and lower mainspring arbor port jewels for the 6000 series, and the lowers can work for some 7000 series. But Phil, you are customer number one for these beautiful, beautiful American-made products that I'm so excited. This is a collaboration with another Seiko watchsmith that a lot of you know, and we're going to be retailing these through him, and I'm going to be using them for my my watch restorations going forward. And I just wanted to share that you, in fact, are the first person to receive one from me, and I'm so excited. So let's take your pair out. There's your upper. There is your over. Have a look at those two. And those are going to go in here and in here. Wonderful. Wonderful. So exciting. All right, Phil. Well, we are nearly ready to go. Had a couple little things that we needed to take care of. Your watch had seen some water damage, which I think is, not unexpected when we look at your dial and hands and things. And water is a weird thing. It's a very strange material that tends to find its way into places that are unexpected. And I'm going to pop a picture in now. So what you can see there is the top, well, actually the underside of your fourth wheel, or I'm sorry, your center wheel. The underside of your center wheel had a ton of rust. And I think what had happened was, here's the center wheel. This is the one we're replacing your center wheel with. And as you saw in that image, the top here, this side, which is actually underneath of your watch, that's held in by the center wheel bridge or cock, which is a plate with a jewel, and moisture had gotten between the jewel and the bearing surface of your wheel and caused it to rust and pit. And so, it was visible by eye when I took it out of the cleaner. I could see that it was this rust red color. And so looking at it under the microscope, you can definitely see that it was in bad shape. Now, luckily, the material that that resides on is a ruby, is a jewel, artificial, material that's very hard and doesn't corrode. And so as a consequence, this component, which we'll install in just a moment, was still in good shape. But definitely need to replace that center wheel. One thing I haven't really done yet is put together your, so this is essentially a cannon pinion from another movement that's in good shape. I'm going to check yours out very closely as we start to get things back together to make sure that it's tight and it's doing its function, because this central stack of wheels and gears and things, they're all sort of integrated together to make up the center wheel, minute hand, or second hand, all the things that sort of go together are in this central portion, and there are 4 or 5 components that all have to fit together in a very sort of highly synchronized way in order to make sure that the function isn't diminished, or the performance isn't diminished by loss of function. So we're going to go through things very carefully here and make sure that we have it exactly as we want. And so right now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start with reassembly. So of course that means lubrication. So here's your brand new American-made beautiful jewel that I've had manufactured with a friend in the business. We are super excited to have these available, and they should be available pretty soon on his website. So keep an eye out for that, Seiko fans. There's your replacement center wheel. It gets lubricated. All right. And your original center wheel cock, which goes back in place. It had to undergo a separate cleaning step just to be 100% sure that we were in the right, doing the right thing. But I think this will allow us to ensure that the performance and the quality of the service will be there for sure. Okay, so now we can put your reassembled barrel in. That looks good. Okay. fourth wheel. Actually, let's go with your third wheel first. Things you can't quite see are really there doing things. And it can really be a drag on performance. It's amazing. And you don't want materials inside of your movement, that's for sure. Right. Escape wheel's looking good. So let's get that back in place. Okay, now we can put your fourth wheel in with a small bit of lubrication here right on the shaft. We'll take a quick look there. Okay. Good. Okay. So now we have to lubricate your barrel arbor. So there's your new upper mainspring arbor port jewel. Okay, very good. Now let's get everybody lined up. Okay, there we go. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, make sure everybody's still turning as they should, which is good. Good. Very nice. Okay. All right, so now we can do a bit of lubrication. Okay. Very good. click spring on. And your ratchet wheel. Ooh, it's moving. Okay, good. Right, so next up is we flip your movement here and install components from the calendar side that need to go on before we finish up. So we're going to lubricate your center wheel and go with your cannon pinion. Where'd you go, cannon pinion? I had you here. Okay, here we are. Good. Okay, now put your die shock in place. One moment. Okay, now we can lubricate these pivots. Okay, and turn back over. Now, let's put some power through the movement and see what we get. Looks pretty good. Okay, that looks nice. All right, so now we can put in your pre-lubricated stones or pre-lubricated pallet fork, which the stones have been properly lubricated. And your bridge. Come on. There we go. Let's make sure. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, now we are ready for the pièce de résistance. Let's see some action in that movement. Try that one more time. And there we go. All right. It's going to be a little slow and wobbly, of course, but we have yet to put a screw in or a jewel. So it's just sitting there bumping around. A little better, of course. We have to put the jewel in place in order to get that right. And that's how we do that. Let's get your jewel locked down, your die shock setting locked down, I should say. In one moment. All right. And with that, we are running. Okay, so starting off pretty well. Got some adjustments to make, of course. It's always where we begin with adjusting. So let's see. First, we got to get some of that bead error out. Oop, that's probably too much. And perhaps in the wrong direction. Yes, very much so. All right, back to where we were. Let's go a little bit the other way. Okay, getting close. Oop, too much. Okay. Okay. My goodness, where are we? Oh, it's very, very, very finicky. Okay, I think we've hit it. That That seems pretty good. Now we can go ahead and work on the rate a bit, which isn't so bad. Actually, I think I'm going to leave that for a moment, let this run for a while, see how we do. All right, I'm going to take a better look at this and see if we're in good shape. Okay, we'll be back. All right, Phil. Well, there has been some real time elapsed since we reconstructed your movement the first time. I have probably had this movement apart, 10 or 15 times in the interim, and there's a specific reason. The reason is water. As we know, your dial in your hands shows some definite result of water intrusion. The thing about that is that does not stop at the dial and hands. Usually your internal components as well suffer from that, and we talked about that a little bit with your center wheel, which is here, but we also have to take into consideration the other components associated with your center wheel, namely your cannon pinion and your fourth wheel. Now, I thought your fourth wheel was clear until I took a very close look at the underside of the gear that's on the inside of your fourth wheel, and it has a chunk of rust that was so predominant that no matter what I did, the movement was just really in rough shape. Now, what's interesting about that to me is that rust is, a form of iron oxide, and et cetera, et cetera. There's changes there in morphology and structure of the material. And in that process, what happens is sometimes, and this is a hypothesis that I have, I think that it expands and that pushes around the jewels and the components and pushes them in weird ways that need to be corrected. And so, for example, when I put in the new center wheel and even checked this center wheel, the jewel that's associated with the center wheel on the main plate had been pushed, and so it was floppy, moving around badly, even with the cannon pinion, which is holding it in place, and the center wheel cock, which holds it in place as well. And this bushing, which goes in here in the center of your movement, it had been pushed in a weird way and then became oblong in its shape. And so I had to replace that with a jewel. And so now you have, all of these centrally located components. It goes goes through this, this goes on top of this, and then you flip this over and this mounts to this. This is the central stack that is your movement. And these are all essentially at this point garbage. They have been destroyed by water. So those are going to come back to you along with this bushing. But now your movement is finally, after quite a bit of extra time, running in a way that I'm happy with. And so we've got performance that's good. The reason that the center is the problem is one of just the fact that water, when it condensates, it's condensating in the center of your glass. And so when it does that, it forms a droplet here. It all sort of runs to the center and condenses here in the middle because this is the high point of the movement. And then it drips. It drips down onto your second hand, and because of capillary action and because water is, invasive in that way, it migrates its way down into the central stack of your movement. And so that leads to issues. We have identified and removed those issues. So I feel confident now that this is running in the way it should. All right, that all said, we can progress. We can move forward. Now that we've done this, we can actually start with the reconstruction of the rest of the movement, which comes now. So now we build out your calendar side. Luckily, it wasn't everywhere. I've had movements where I've needed to replace both jewels, all the stack, the third wheel, the escape wheel have all been wasted, essentially. And it comes down to water. You know, usually these things, they're pretty robust in terms, if they've been maintained over their lifetime and they're in pretty good shape, you don't have to worry about that so much. But if there's water, water is a killer. It will destroy the movement. All right, well, I'm going to put these away. I'm having a bit of a thunderstorm here. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's kind of bad at the moment. Oh, not to mention, I'm sorry, I forgot to talk about this. Your mainspring was very badly cupped, almost to the point where I had to replace part of your barrel. So you now have a new mainspring as well. That helped with performance too. Okay, lots of things, but you know, it's worth it. These watches are appreciating assets, in my opinion, and they deserve to be preserved, maintained, and enhanced, if you will. I don't know that we've enhanced with any different kinds of materials, for sure. Everything here is stock Seiko products, except for the mainspring, of course. That's new, because you can't get Seiko mainsprings. So it's a brand new mainspring from Europe. Okay. Make sure everybody's well lubricated. Sorry if you hear gaming sounds in the background, but I have a tween who thinks he's a gamer, so he's gaming. So let's get everybody lubricated. The one thing that's very interesting to me is, I don't know if you can see this from your perspective in the camera, but you can see here, you don't see this very often, there's a loss of finish on this part of the main plate, which comes from the wheel that sits on here being able to flop around, and so that's certainly not something you want. Alright, let's get your wheel on. Okay. Okay. Right. All right, so now we're going to put your beautifully rebuilt crown and stem in. Very cool. Okay. And there we go. Okay, that's good. Okay, so now we can return your date wheel. No. Right. The plate comes next. All right. All right, looks good. Very nice. All right, so now we can return your dial in hands and come back and finish up your movement. Okay, Phil. Well, we are here now at the end. So, as I was looking at the performance, I was waiting for things to sort of break in, and they never really broke in the direction that I wanted them to in terms of the numbers. Your amplitude was still remaining low. I was optimistic that we had eliminated all the issues, but it turns out that we hadn't. And here was the last issue to be worked out. This is your pallet fork. This is part of the escapement, the lever escapement system. That's part of the tick and tock. So this rotates back and forth, tick tock, tick tock. Turns out that when I looked at it very closely under the microscope, the stones, these purple ends here, they were badly worn due to multiple things. So what happens is that as material gets sort of worked around, moisture, condensation, lack of lubrication, as that happens inside of the watch, those stones, which you would think are a bit hardened, right? They're very hard materials. They're being scraped every time by a piece of metal. There's a piece of metal scrapes this way and a piece of metal that scrapes this way. And as that happens, you wear grooves. And under the microscope, you can see that this is really bad. So that's coming back to you. There's a new one in. It's been replaced. I found the best one that I have, and it's in there now and doing a really nice job. So we're going to go ahead and just finish up. Get this installed. This is your winding, essentially your winding bridge. Okay. So last few screws here. Okay. Get everybody in before we make everybody tight. Sorry for the noise. Last one. Okay. So now just invaded by dogs. All right. There's your winding weight. Its screw. Very nice. All right. Let's get your new case back seal, which has been lubricated. Ready to go back in, or ready to go in. And then we can have a look at your watch. Right. And there we go. All right. Well, Phil, this has been one of those watches that makes you question yourself a little bit. Not that it's a bad watch. It's just that, you know, plenty of things to consider. So, yeah, it's a beautiful watch. Yeah, I love these watches. But here's my, for those you and those who are watching in the future, when you think about a watch especially like a Seiko diver or some watch that's perhaps seen water in its life, find one that doesn't give you a telltale sign that it's experienced internal water. The reason I say that is because the amount of work it takes to trace down the issues that the water itself can provide to get the watch to its best state. And, for this watch, this is the best state. We are at the best this watch is ever going to be in its life. In terms of the function of the movement, it's really running fine. But the amount of time and effort to get there is a lot. If I can be frank, it's a it's a great deal of extra time to find all the little things and parts and pieces and move things around and shift things and replace parts. It's an expense. It's an added expense that if you want your watch to function properly and to work right, you can clean up, dials and hands and, relume and do that sort of stuff. But it's the insides that matter. Those are the parts that suffer. And if it has seen a great deal of water, chances are good you're going to have issues internally. So just, there's no dig on the watch. It's a beautiful watch, and I think you're going to get a lot of great use out of it. But we go over the parts and pieces here. We have a few things that have been questionable in terms of the. Ooh, there's plenty of pieces here to go through. Your bushing. That's part of, we went through this already. So those are the pieces that are coming back here. It's full stack. There's your brand new, or I put a brand new jewel in to replace this. That was not a damage issue. That was just a wear issue over time. But that's typical. That's something that all of these watches suffer from. You also have a new pallet fork, new seals. You have your bezel seal here. Here's your here's the seal for your crown. It was actually cracked. I've never seen one cracked before, but that one was cracked in half. It's stiff as a board, of course, as they all are. So that's been now replaced and renewed with a nice, soft, lubricated rubber donut of a O-ring. The function of your watch is great. Everything is working exactly as it should. I went through all my checks and made sure the cannon pinion was nice and tight so it turns over the day and date, the date on your watch. Performance-wise, it is a very clean signal. Everything is running beautifully. Your hand alignment is very nice. This aftermarket sweep second, it pushes pretty far down toward the minute hand. Have to be a little careful with those in the future, just because you can get interference very easily if you're not very careful. And so right now it's set up with zero interference, and everything passes by. The clearances are tight, but it's certainly right. So that takes takes a little effort. So if you're in the market for an aftermarket hand, just keep in mind that you got to really be careful with the clearances. Anyway, that's just more of a PSA than anything else. All right, well, I hope you enjoy it. It's back to its glory in terms of the performance, and we will get this back to you as soon as we can. All right, well, thank you very much, Phil. I look forward to getting this back to you. Take care. Thanks for watching.